Hey y'all, welcome back to Cable Family Farm. We just got in about 300 new chicks that are going to be our new batch of egg layers. This is our first time using this new Polyface brooder. We're going to walk you through, how everything's going with the setup and what our plan is for these birds in particular. So one of our previous videos that you guys loved, we showed you how to build these mini brooders, and we're going to be making a couple upgrades to them that we're going to get to in a future video. But today we wanted to show you how we painted the exterior. This is an exterior acrylic paint that we've put just on top of the zip sheathing, and that's going to keep water out. It's going to make it last a lot longer, and we're going to go back and tape all the edges and the seams as well. But we think it came out really nice. We chose white to try to lower the temperature and try to reflect some of that heat instead of retaining it, because we know it's going to get pretty hot in the summer. Like Caden said, this is our first batch of birds this year, and we're still doing some research on things that we want to add to the brooder. And so we wanted to go through today and show you some of our temporary setup and how we got this brooder ready for these birds, and check out how they're doing. The water system and the heat source are definitely the two most important things when trying to brood chicks. For the water system, we're using the same kind of thing we did last year. We're feeding water from this barrel. It's a gravity-fed system, and so it feeds these bell drinkers. And we use these bell drinkers, about one of them for every 150 chicks. So we have one right here, and then we have like a temporary water, just because we need some longer hose to run to put another bell drinker in here. That seems to be working pretty good. That's the same thing we use in our tractors. For the heat, we're using these, just generic tractor supply heat lamps. I think they're 250 watts or something like that. We got 5 of them in this brooder. We felt like that was going to be the right number for 300 chicks, especially early in the season with it being cold at night. We found that this brooder does retain a good bit of heat, so that's a good thing. Last year, previously, we had our brooder in an open barn, so there was a lot of draft and it didn't really hold heat. We can get away with a little bit less of these heat lamps than we did previously. If we were to make a recommendation, I would say conservatively that one of these heat lamps can brood about 50 chicks or so. These heaters that we're using now are going to be a temporary thing. We plan to get the commercial propane heaters for each of our brooders, so we'll just have one heater in each one. And that'll regulate temperature a lot better. They typically have a thermostat on them, so they'll turn on or turn off based on the temperature in the brooder. But with these, you have to adjust the chain height. So at nighttime we have to lower the heat lamps down further, and then during the daytime, we'll raise them up or cut some of them off. It's definitely going to be nicer and much easier, more efficient when we have one of those propane heaters. So the last thing in here is the feeders, which are super important because you don't want your feed getting dirty, and you want to have enough feed to not have to refill it 4 times a day. And so we actually last year decided to build our own feeders. So these here, the feeders are pretty expensive, and it's hard to find ones that will hold enough feed for the chicks you're doing if you're doing any scale, or at least they don't hold enough for it to be very efficient with the work you're doing. And so we got some PVC. We made our own feeders, did the math on how many we would need based on how much they're holding, and we just have some wood blocks on the end so that we can dig out the brooder and sink these in to lower it when they're chicks, and they can reach that. And then when they get bigger, this piece just sits on top of the shavings, and we can accommodate bigger chicks as well, up to 3 weeks before they go out into the pasture where we have even bigger feeders. The other cool feature is this conduit piece on the top, and this spins, and the purpose for that is so that they don't sit on it and poop in their feed, and they can't just directly get into it. So if they try to perch here, they're going to be unstable, they'll fall off, and they just don't try to do it very often. So that means their feed is staying clean, and they can only access it by pecking right through here. Keeps everything nice and neat in here. These chicks that we have in here are your standard hybrid brown egg layers. They're called different things. We got these from Cackle Hatchery. They're called Golden Comets. But like I said, we ordered 300 of them, and we plan to raise these on a leased property, about 2.5 acre pasture. We're going to be raising these birds the same way we raise our current laying hens. So we use the Premier 1 netting, and instead of a mobile coop that we hook up to a four-wheeler like we do currently, we're going to come up with like new shelters that have nesting boxes in them, of course, that we're going to move around the pasture by hand. So we're going to try to come up with something unique that, like I said, we can move by hand and we don't have to have equipment for. We don't exactly know what that's going to look like yet, but we have some ideas, and we're really excited to try to come up with something that's going to work good there. We currently have a group of laying hens that's about, I think, 170 birds, and they're producing a lot of eggs. We're probably getting, right now it's winter, we're getting about 40 dozen a week. While that might seem like a lot of eggs, there's a lot more demand than that for our eggs in particular, and we're trying to produce more, take advantage of that opportunity. Being that we constantly move our laying hens onto fresh pasture, so every 3 or 4 days depending, and we feed them a quality feed. Our eggs are in high demand at our market, and we just need to produce more if we want to meet that demand. So with these birds, these hybrid brown egg layers, they are the best egg layers that you can get pretty much, and so they'll lay almost an egg a day. So you're probably looking at about 300 eggs a year. And with these guys, once they're in full production, we should be getting around 120 dozen a week. We're really looking forward to having that many more eggs, just to help us grow our farm and put quality ingredients on our customers' table.
Just a little tip with your heat lamps and how to know if they're warm enough. You want to be watching, are there birds roaming around eating and drinking, or are they all under your heat lamps? Are they really starting to pile up? If that's the case, you might need more heat lamps, or you may just need to lower the heat lamps and raise that surface temperature of the ground level where they're at. If you have birds moving around, eating, drinking, and then you also have some birds under the heaters, you're doing pretty good, because everybody's having a good time. They're roaming around. When they need heat, they're going to go back to the lamp. And when they're warm, they're going to go grab a drink or something to eat. So this is really ideal here. It looks really nice. Lots of birds eating. They're drinking when they need it. Looks great.
Right now, these chicks are just a couple days old. They're going to be in these brooders for about 4 to 5 weeks before we take them out onto pasture. You're able to raise these birds in the brooder a little bit longer than you can Cornish cross, which is what we raise a lot of, just because they don't get as big as quick. Like I said, once they're about 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to take them out on the pasture, and at that age they're not quite big enough to go inside the electric fence, just because they're too small and they can get through those little openings. And we've tried that before, and it's not fun chasing a bunch of little chickens around, and so they really need to be a little bit older, about 7 or 8 weeks before you put them out into that electric net. So what we're going to do is we have some empty chicken tractors, the Joel Salatin style shelters, that we're going to put these birds in for those few weeks before we move them into netting. We feel like that's a good middle step. This is our first time using broiler shelters to do this job of raising the chicks for those few weeks of in-between stage where they're too big to be in the brooder but too small to be inside that electric fence. And we just think it's cool that we can use that type of infrastructure for multiple things. We're really happy with how these new Polyface Mini-Brooders are working out for us. We're going to make a couple more upgrades, like the heat lamp like I was talking about, and we got a few other upgrades that we're going to make. So follow along if you want to see more of that, and then also how we raise these chickens, for the next 16 weeks or so until they start laying eggs. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.